Hi, welcome back to our video about Plan for Success. If you haven't gone and watched the video Plan for Success about brainstorming, go back and watch that video now before you start this one. Now, today's lesson, we're going to talk about how to turn your brainstorming ideas into a proper story graph like we've got here today. Now, this should probably make sense to you if you've been listening to what we've been going through in class, but we'll go through it again to make sure you understand exactly what's going on. Remember, we start with our sizzling start, and then we've got to fill in our backfill where we talk about our who, our what, our where, our when, and then we get into our pebble problem. Now, remember our pebble problem. Just imagine you're up in a tree and you know someone's trying to get you down and they throw a pebble at you. It's a bit of a problem to you and it's going to be annoying, but it's not going to ruin your day, but it's not a really good start. And then the next time they pick up a big rock and they throw that rock at you, and that rock's got to be getting pretty hard to get out of the way of. And you might be able to duck it, but it's becoming a big problem, this person throwing this rock at you. And the last one, someone picks up a huge boulder and they throw it straight towards the tree. You don't think you've got any chance of getting out of the way of this boulder. How are you possibly going to get out? This is getting so bad. We get to the climax. How are they possibly going to get over this scenario? And then somehow we have a resolution, and towards the end we have a character wrap up where we talk about what became of the story and how the story ends. That's a bit of a tricky part, which we quite often have troubles with, but we'll get there when we go through it. Okay, so remember, from our pebble problem, was that your character at this birthday disaster, the worst birthday you've ever had, your character, your person in your story, woke up late. They woke up late, they were stressed out because they had all this stuff planned, and now they're running around because they're really in a bit of a frazzle. Then the rock problem getting worse was the person called up who was supposed to bring all the food and the drinks, and they'd cancelled on you at the last minute. You had nearly no chance to get any food to your party, and you're freaking out because this day is just getting worse and worse and worse. How could this day get any worse? And then all your friends are around and you're gonna blow out all your candles, and then somehow the candles hit the curtain and the curtain goes up and the whole house starts to light on fire, and you put out the thing and the party's ruined, and how are we gonna fix this party? So we're going to fill in a few things because we've already, with our last one, pretty much done all of our rising tension. We just don't have our start and our finish. So let's go back to our backfill. We're going to start here. We're not going to start at the sizzling start. We're going to start at our backfill. Who's in the story? Now, today's story, the party is going to be about a man or a boy called David. Since it's my birthday coming up, I get to be the main star of the story. Now, we might have David, his mum, his dad, his sister. Her name is, I don't know. I'll make it my sister's name, actually. Let's make it my sister's name. Sister called Cassie. All your friends are going to be in the story now, but they're not really that important now. Now, it's set at your house. Setting at your house. And you might also write that. What else do we need to know? Who, where, setting it where, when is it? Well, it's just happened. Okay, so that's kind of giving us an idea of who's going to be in our story. And I'm just going to write in here, worst birthday ever. Now, let's go back to our sizzling start. If we've got a story now which has all these characters in the story, we're going to go through and explain who these characters are, but let's start with a sizzling start to get the audience attention. Now, how are you going to get that? You're either going to get that by using a sound effect, by using an action with something's going on, dialogue, two characters talking to each other, or one character talking to the other character, internal monologue, what's going on inside your brain as a way to make it interesting, a flashback, or a question. There's so many different ways to start this story. So what you might want to do is go through each of them and think of one for each of them, and then figure out which one would be best. So the first one I would go sound effect. Well, if your character knows that they wake up late, so maybe your sound effect could be the beep beep of the alarm. That would be a good sound effect. There's not really another sound effect that would make sense for the start of that. Action. Maybe your character's just woken up and they're frantically running around. We'll get to this part later. So maybe they're trying to get dressed quickly. Now that might result in, as David ran around the room like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to get dressed as quickly as possible, you know, he was wondering why he'd stepped through this alarm or something like that. And then you go back and explain what's happening, but you're trying to get their attention at the start. So we've got a sound effect, we've got an action, we could try dialogue. Now, what would be a good dialogue for a person who's waking up late for a party? It could be someone saying, David, Get out of bed now, screamed Mum, or something like that, right? So you're basically starting the story, screamed Mum, come on. Screamed Mum. Okay, internal monologue, what's going on in their head? Maybe, so we're going to start with when things are getting bad, what's going on in his head. It's like, I thought to myself, how can this day get any worse? So it's something that's going on inside his head, and you're already getting their attention because they're thinking to themselves that, whoa, what's happening? Why has his day got bad? You're already making the audience curious because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get their attention at the start. The flashback might be, as I looked around my torched living room. I'm not going to have room here, so I'll fix that in my head. As I looked around at my torched living room, I wondered, is this the worst birthday that's ever occurred? And a question. You could just be starting with a question to get their attention. What's the worst birthday you've ever had? Well, let me tell you about mine. Mine started on my 8th birthday. It started the worst way possible. And then you could go through and explain that. But remember, a lot of people start their sizzling start and then go straight into their pebble, and they don't even explain who's in the story. So we're going to make sure we do that. Now I'm trying to look through these now that I've got them, thinking about which way I like. I do like this one, and I do like this one. The sound effects of the beep beep, and then this one too. I'm going to use them both. I'm going to then, in my story, have like beep, 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 went the alarm on David's bedside table. Get out of bed now, David. You're half an hour late. So you can add in 2 of them actually within the same sizzling start. So I'm actually going to, in my one, add them both in. Okay? Now we've got this story now which starts like that, and then we go through the backfill, and his day gets really bad, and the food was cancelled, and his cake gets really bad, and we don't have an ending to the story. We really don't. The climax of the story is that everyone goes home, everybody leaves. Now, all good stories can come crashing down if they don't have a good ending. And lots of bad stories can almost be salvaged by a really cool, really interesting ending, which kind of ties everything together. So it's a really hard thing to make sure you know what to do with an ending of a story. Now, it's a tricky one because how can we sort of salvage the day? Because if it's going really bad, he's somehow got to get out of it. So maybe something really good could happen to him right at the end. So maybe he's crying. So everybody leaves. You might write down David was crying on his couch, sobbing about how bad his birthday was. And then maybe his mum gives him something, some present, she's been saving it. It was a puppy, it was an Xbox, it was a PlayStation. And you're playing with it. He's like, this is actually the best birthday I've ever had because he ends up getting what he wanted. There's something like that. Somehow maybe something really good could happen, like someone who visited him who he hadn't seen in ages, and it was like, even though all his friends had to go home, he actually got to see his long lost cousin who he hadn't seen in ages because they knocked at the door. So it should be at his worst possible point in the story. At the absolute worst point, something good happens. What magically that good thing is, I'm going to leave up to you. My one is that he gets some brand new VR headset present, and he plays with it, and he has like the best time ever, and he's super happy, and or maybe his friends do stay around and they end up playing with that together and they all have a great time. Something like that to end your story in a way where he still ends up being happy. Because if you just end it on him being upset and him having the worst birthday, it's really not a very good story. And we don't want to magically make something happen where, oh, the house magically turns back to normal. Because once again, we've made our story based on some realism. We don't want to then ruin it right towards the end. We probably could have a better ending than that. And we've talked about in class about how to brainstorm possible endings. And we might get there later on. At the moment, this is a plan. But remember, plans can always change. If you're writing this, realize it doesn't work and need to change it, that's what it's there for. But it's a good basis to have to work off as a way to say, at least I know where I'm kind of going. I can change stuff. You're not locked into this. And like, oh, I wish I'd written something different down. Well, if you realize something better halfway through, change it. But at least you're not going to get somewhere and realize that you should have planned all along and you just don't know where this story is going to go. So I'm going to attach the file of the plan for you, and I want you to go through and plan your story out with all of these elements. I hope this has been helpful. We'll break down each of these elements as we begin to write them, but just as the plan stage, I think this is really useful. So I hope